Okay, you should have the following in your notes. Kind of an overview of the story of Joseph from Genesis and the themes of it. What I'm going to show you next is a video from Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is a musical put together some years ago, very popular with middle schools and high schools. And the story is essentially the same as the story of Joseph in Genesis, has almost all the exact same characters, the dream cycles and everything else. But it's an example of a story where the story has been changed enough that it's not just changed some details in the story, it's actually changed the message of the story. So I'm going to start with a video. I'm going to play it for about 1.5 minutes. And as the video plays, as the woman sings, I want you to jot down a few phrases that she sings, just off the cuff. You don't have to start right away, but what she's singing about, what are some of the themes, write some of these in your notes. And then I'm going to pause it and say a few things, and then have you jot down some more lyrics. So here she goes.
Some folks dream of the wonders they'll do before their time on this planet is through. Some just don't have anything planned. They hide their hopes and their heads in the sand. Now I don't say who is wrong, who is right, but if by chance you are here for the night, then all I need is an hour or two to tell the tale of a dreamer like you. We all dream a lot, some are lucky, some are not. But if you think it, want it, dream it, then it's real. You are what you feel. But all that I say can be told another way. In the story of a boy whose dream came true. And it could be you.
I'm going to pause right there. If you didn't write something down yet, please write it down now. Any phrase from what she said. You need to warn the sub, if they grew up watching the Donnie and Marie show, that Donnie Osmond with hair extensions as the star of the show is a little bit alarming. Listen to what he says, and this is also the song that's used at the very end of the musical, so it kind of comes back to it and reinforces the major message. So again, write down another phrase or two from here as Donnie sings.
I closed my eyes, drew back the curtain to see for certain I thought I knew. Far, far away, someone was weeping, but the world was sleeping. Any dream will do. I wore my coat with golden lining, color shining, wonderful and new. And in the east, the dawn was breaking, and the world was waking. Any dream will do. colors faded into darkness. I was left alone. To the beginning, the light is dim, and the dream is too. The world and I, we are still waiting, still hesitating. Any dream will do. Any dream will do. Any
Okay, so hopefully you wrote down something from what Donnie sang as well. You can do this next to the notes you've already taken or below it, but I want to look at the story of Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. The only major character from the Genesis story who actually does not make it into the Technicolor Dreamcoat is God. In the story of Joseph in Genesis, God is the source of the dreams. God has a covenant with the people. God has a plan. God's letting free will work. But God is not a character in the story. Instead, the dreams come from us. We all dream a lot. Some are lucky, some are not. In the story of Joseph in the Technicolor and Dreamcoat, the nature of the dreams apparently does not matter. If you go to see this play, the closing words over and over and over again are, any dream will do, any dream. You know, I'm not sure about that. I mean, any dream will do. Well, I have a dream to be the greatest heroin distributor in the Portland area. I mean, that's a dream, right? And, you know, any dream will do. You know, we all dream a lot. Some are lucky, some are not. And, you know, any dream will do. It's a different message than the story of Joseph in Genesis. In fact, I would say that this is an example of Genesis being Disneyfied. And that's an actual word. You can look it up. When you take a story and you kind of simplify it, it kind of sounds like Jiminy Cricket, you know, when you wish upon a star, makes no difference, you know, your dreams come true. Kind of that nonsensical line the woman sings at one point. If you think it, want it, dream it, then it's real. You are what you feel, whatever the heck that means. And if you think about any Disney movies you've seen before, they're all about dreams come true. It's generic. You know, you could take The Lion King and you could show it at a neo-Nazi youth camp, and you could talk about how, you know, there's so much chaos in the Pride Lands, and you're going to come back and you're going to bring order, and they have cast you out from society, but you're going to come back and, you know, bring things together. You know, just follow your dream. Any dream will do. You know, if you think it, want it, dream it, it's real. You are what you feel. And this is actually something that Disney, as a mass producer of movies, tries to make their movies pretty generic so that there's not necessarily an overly strong message, and tries to take stories that might end in tragedy and give them a warm, happy feeling at the end. If you have ever read the story of The Little Mermaid, you know that The Little Mermaid ends really, really differently than The Little Mermaid ends in the Disney movie version. She dies. She becomes sea foam for hundreds of years. If you've ever read The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and if you ever have the chance to read something by Victor Hugo, highly recommend it. The Hunchback of Notre Dame ends with this really tragic, sad scene. But no, it's singing and dancing gargoyles and things. And, your dreams come true. And, you wish upon a star, and I dreamed it and it came true. So again, with the story of the boy who cried wolf, I was able to tweak that story enough to say, hey, if you lie, you can become successful. The story of Gilgamesh was all about how stuff happens and no one's in control, and it seems that only the big people ever survive. And the Jews took that story and changed it into a story about God punishing evil and God rewarding good. And here's the flip side of that. Here's the story in Genesis, and it's all about covenant, it's all about relationship, and it's become a Disney movie. Okay, some quick notes for you. There's going to be some abbreviations on next week's test. They are AD, BC, CE, and BCE. And if you know what AD stands for, go ahead and pause a moment, but go ahead and blurt it right out. I usually have at least one person every class who says, oh yeah, I learned it's after death. If your middle school teacher taught you that, please give me his or her email address and I will set them straight. AD is a Latin phrase, Anno Domini, an ablative singular and a genitive singular, which means in the year of our Lord. In case you're not sure what in the year of our Lord means, BC makes that a little more explicit, before Christ. That the calendar we use is dated from the birth of Christ. Sorry, and I'll explain this next semester, Jesus was probably born a few years BC. He probably wasn't born in the year 0 or the year 1, which 0 doesn't really exist. Or he might have been born 4 or 5 years AD, depending on which gospel you're reading. And for Christians, dating their calendar from the birth of Christ makes sense. So everything that happened before Christ is BC. Everything that's happened since Christ is in the year of our Lord. Obviously, not everybody in the world is Christian. If you are a Hindu, or you are an atheist, or you are a Jew, or you are a Muslim, or you are Confucian, whatever you are, you might not feel comfortable putting 2017 AD on your letterhead. But you're not going to use some alternate dating system that's going to be confusing when you write a check that has the year 5782. So if you are not a Christian or not somebody who identifies Jesus as your Lord, you might use the abbreviations CE or BCE to refer to current dates or to refer to dates before the birth of Christ. And those are abbreviations for Common Era or before the Common Era. Make sure you spell era correctly, E-R-A. It is a common mistake for people to misspell that. So the common time period. So there will be a section on the test where I will talk about this or ask you to identify these. And we're going to start using these dating systems as we get into things that are more historical next semester. So make sure you jot down these notes, who uses these kinds of abbreviations, and what they mean. Finally, I have some passages in the Bible that I want you to look up. First of all, I want you to look at chapter 32, 23 through 33, and figure out what the word Israel means, or how Jacob's name gets changed to Israel. Then I want you to look at chapter 28, 10 through 22. You'll need to get Bibles for this. And look at the vision that Jacob has, because he's been resting his head on a hard rock or listening to Hard Rock by Led Zeppelin. So write down in your notes how his name gets changed in 32, or what his name means in chapter 32, and what vision he has in chapter 28. And then I'd like you to read about the 11 brothers and their names and their meaning, and just write down one brother's name and what it means and what you found funny about that, and then read the story of Dinah in chapter 34. There's one test question on Dinah next week.